Welcome to the INFOWARS Nightly News. I'm David Knight. It's Monday, November 30th, 2015. Here are our top stories.
Tonight, calls to fire the head of the DEA as politicians grow weary of the never-ending drug war. And world leaders use their private jets to gather at a climate summit where they hope to convince you to lower your standard of living. That's next.
You've got more than 20 carbon trading centers, and they're all literally owned by the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, and every other piece of trash you can imagine, like Ted Turner, Bill Gates. I mean, it is a gravy train of open taxes paid directly to criminal maggots. You cannot make it up. A Nazi collaborator who helped round up thousands and rob them, who told 60 Minutes he's not sorry for it, running anti-liberty organizations in America, George Soros. Good God! Clean, pure drinking water. You can't survive without it. But where do you get it? Alexa Pure Pro is a brand new, groundbreaking, gravity-fed water filtration system that is like no other. The Alexa Pure Pro transforms water from virtually any fresh source into clean, healthy drinking water, pairing the unprecedented superfiltration power of an all-new gravity block core with a hybrid chromatic shell. It removes up to 99.999% of impurities, including bacteria, viruses, fluoride, disinfectants, volatile organic contaminants, and hormones. Filter capacity up to 5,000 gallons. Stainless steel construction, easy assembly, low maintenance. Replacement filters are simple to install. And now, as part of an exclusive limited time introductory offer, you can save $20 off the retail price and get free shipping. This is a limited time offer, so order your unit today and receive free shipping and $20 off. Go to InfoWarsStore.com or call 888-253-3139.
Well, today the massive worldwide climate conference in Paris begins, and I think it's interesting to see how the French government is reacting to this, because you have to understand this whole thing, the science of it, the environmental science, is based on an appeal to authority. But there's also a political science side to this, and it is also based on an appeal to authority. It's very authoritarian in nature, and we can see this in the suppression of debate and the recriminations against protesters. We can see this in the criminalization of dissent. These are all things that are being called for by politicians across Western Europe and the United States. But let's look at what's happening specifically in France. Now, France began by pledging 100% security within the climate conference walls. They said public demonstrations that were planned to coincide with the COP21 talks were canceled on security concerns. They say the security of everything within the rooms of the conference, we will guarantee 100%. But we can't completely ensure the safety of the external part. In other words, they're going to protect themselves, but they don't really care about you. They can't guarantee that they're going to protect you. And we have to understand that these are the same people that are suppressing speech and discussion about this on both sides. The people that they came after first are the people who think that they're not doing enough to control the climate, to control our economies. But they've shut down people on the other side as well. They're calling for RICO statutes to go after people on the other side. Saturday, before the conference even began, the French used their emergency laws to go out and arrest ahead of time climate protesters, potential protesters. They put 24 green activists under house arrest using emergency laws. The Interior Minister, Casanova, said the activists were suspected of planning violent protests. If you're suspected of planning, that's a crime, okay? So they said that they had been violent in past demonstrations, said that they would not respect the state of emergency that the French had declared. That was contested by Greenpeace France director, who said that to his knowledge, all those put under house arrest were pacifist activists who had never committed any violent acts, had never been charged with anything. They didn't say how long these people were going to stay under arrest, but it is apparently going to be the duration of the conference. Nevertheless, even though they put some people under house arrest, they still had about 100 people go out and riot because they want the government to do more. I don't know why they think the government really cares about them, who really cares about the environment. These are the people, the big corporations, the big governments that the big corporations run. These are the people who are the biggest polluters, the biggest energy users on planet Earth. They're making money out of this. They're going to use your concerns, if you believe that this is a problem, they're going to use your concerns to create global governance, or carbon imperialism, as India talks about it. We're going to get to that in just a moment. But look at what they did to the other side. This is what they did to the protesters, and some of them were violent as they came out and protested and clashed with the police. We don't know who started the violence. Nevertheless, we saw a meteorologist, a household name in France, and we pointed out this about a month ago. He was suspended. He was the national weatherman in France. Everybody knew him. He was on France Channel 2, and he said he wrote a book, My Climate Investigation. He said it was published about a month before they banned him from the airwaves, and he did this in response to what the foreign minister of France, Laurent Fabius, had said. He met with TV meteorologists, asked them to highlight climate change issues in their broadcast. In other words, don't talk about the weather, talk about my political agenda of climate change. And we saw this when there was the American Meteorological Society had their meeting here in Austin. There was an organization there that was funded by George Soros that was complaining about the fact that weathermen who are having difficulty predicting the weather accurately a day in advance, that weathermen were not pushing climate change, talking about how the climate is going to change 50, 100 years, 1,000 years from now. They were concerned about that, and they were saying, you are the people that are most trusted by the public. You can sell this agenda. Well, a lot of them weren't buying that. As a matter of fact, this head meteorologist in France said he was horrified by the efforts of the French minister to politicize this. And so he spoke out about it. He wrote this book. He accused state-funded climate change scientists of being manipulated, being politicized. He accused the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that's the UN's IPCC, of publishing deliberately misleading data. So he was fired. That's the kind of recrimination and the kind of suppression of speech and debate that we see on both of anybody on either side of this issue being done by those who want to push this. Now, in the United States, of course, and we talked about this last week, I have a Democratic senator who's trying to prosecute global warming skeptics. He's behind this effort by scientists who sent a letter to the White House and the Justice Department asking them to use the RICO statutes to go after anyone who doesn't buy into global warming caused by coal. Very specific, even though the science, I believe, is not settled. Many people don't believe the science is settled. They're still going to go after people with the statute that was designed to go after organized crime. But of course, Obama sees this as the high point of his environmental quest. That's what the Wall Street Journal says. They said back in 2009, he announced new fuel efficiency standards for vehicles, a huge stimulus package for renewable energy resources. And of course, that's the bottom line. When you look at how these renewable energy programs work, you get an understanding that what this is about is a massive redistribution of wealth. Redistribution from one industry to another industry, from one country to another, of sovereignty, from individual nation states to a global governance. Politico points this out. They say, the more seriously you take the need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, the angrier you should be. They said the Paris climate deal is really going to be meaningless. But let's take a look at their analysis, because they do believe that one is needed. They believe that we're in an emergency situation. But they say the climate talks are complex and opaque. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound like the trade treaties that we've seen being privately negotiated, being opaque, not open to the public? They say conventional wisdom holds that negotiators are hashing out a fair allocation of the deep emission cuts all countries would need to make that limit warming. The image bears little resemblance, however, to reality, because we always see is this secret confab that is going to allocate resources, allocate economies, whether it's with trade or whether it's with energy usage. And of course, they're going to create an international organization that is not going to be accountable to any of the nations that created it to do that allocation in the future. They point out that China and India have rejected, quote, any obligatory review mechanism for increasing individual efforts of developing countries. There you go. See, and we're going to talk about how this really breaks down with the drafts that we have seen released of the actual climate change. But understand that the way that they're selling this, they're telling you that global warming causes things like terrorism. We've seen that this is told, Bernie Sanders was talking about how it was a direct cause of terrorism. We've seen Obama saying that it was a direct cause of terrorism. Now seen Prince Charles saying the same thing. We're told that it's going to cause flying rocks. Yes, that came out this weekend. We're told that polar bears are going to be floating on icebergs at sea. We've got a documentary filmmaker who's going to be tackling that with us later in the program. We're even told that mummies are going to be turning to black ooze. Maybe we're going to have dogs and cats living together. This is biblical, the catastrophes that are on our way. But what are the real causes of this? What are the things that we need to stop? Well, we've been told your car, of course, but let's not crack down on the cars of the globalists who are going to profit from this. The trips, even though they can fly on private jets everywhere. It gets even more personal, though. They're going to come after your steak, your turkey, your pumpkin. We've got articles about all of that. Going back to this last weekend, Washington Post talked about another danger of climate change because everything that goes wrong in the world is about climate change. This one, giant flying boulders. And they point out James Hansen, the retired NASA scientist, sometimes dubbed the father of global warming, says that a series of giant boulders arranged in an almost perfect line down in the Bahamas is evidence of previous global warming. He has a theory about these rocks. They say it's so provocative, frankly terrifying, that some critics wonder whether the man who helped to spawn the whole debate about the dangers of climate change has gone too far. Yes, another wild tale. Here he's got a large number of rocks, and simply because the rocks are different in consistency from the soil on which they rest, he believes that they were thrown up there by the ocean in a previous time when it would have been man-made global warming, but it would have been global change worldwide. And of course, they're in a straight line, but of course, that wouldn't be man-made because you can't imagine people being able to do something like that because everybody, if they don't have a PhD from an Ivy League school, they can't figure out how to tie their own shoes. Nevertheless, this is the kind of thing we've seen. And of course, they're coming after juicy steaks. This is an article from The Lid. The global warming believers want to take away the joy of a juicy steak. Of course they do. They hate cows. They hate everything that's part of your lifestyle. That's why you have to understand this isn't something that's just going to affect the oil industry or the coal industry. They're going to affect everything that you do. Another article, should your turkey be taxed for climate change? Of course, they're coming after turkey because it's Thanksgiving. A month ago, it was the pumpkins that they were coming after. And of course, this is all about stopping terrorism. Climate change is about stopping terrorism, remember? We've got Prince Charles now saying that climate change is to blame for ISIS. This is what he had to say. The accumulating effect of climate change means that people will have to move. No, the reality is that when we create wars in their country, they have to move as refugees. That's what's really creating this. And as we pointed out before, when Obama made this ridiculous statement, when we had Bernie Sanders saying it was a direct cause of terrorism, we pointed out Al-Qaeda and ISIS were not created to combat climate change or global warming. So these are things that are absolutely insane. But in order to take care of all these alarmist claims that they make, they're going to have to come out after everything that you have, your car, your ability to move around, everything that you eat, your business, your air conditioning, your fireplace, your barbecue. Everything will have to be changed. It will have to be sacrificed to their world religion. And we're talking about world religion. Look at what the Pope is saying. The world is headed towards suicide if no climate agreement is reached. Yeah, we have a disaster of biblical proportions, he says. He says this is likely humanity's last chance. He says the world is at the limits of suicide. That's what the Pope is telling people, trying to make a moral case for this. I think far closer to reality is the idea that it is carbon imperialism. This is what India is saying. As John Kerry came out and singled India out as the biggest challenge, they got very angry about this. The UK Telegraph points out through the smog, coal-hungry India sees carbon imperialism in the West. They point out one thing that Western countries can agree on is that dirty, polluting coal needs to be phased out. That's Obama's war on coal. Remember, he pointed that out before he even became president. He said you can open a coal burning factory, but a power source, but we're going to bankrupt you if you do. They say, unfortunately, India is already the world's third largest polluter, and they're not about to reduce any of their coal productions. They say the breakneck dash for coal is taking place across India, where on average, one new mine is opening every month. And that's while we are closing ours. Now, they're saying that they're not going to take any kind of reductions, any kind of cutbacks. As we've seen in the official draft text of this agreement, we've seen that there are two ways that they are looking to move forward on this. This is on page 19, Article 10, Global Stocktake. In other words, we're going to look at where everybody falls on this. We're going to monitor what people are doing, and we've got two options to do this. Number one, we'll have a committee that will promote compliance through adequate financial resources and a transfer of technology. So in other words, we're going to give them technology, we're going to give them money.